already mentioned, my name is Killian Ditch. I'm going to be talking about this tool that I created. It's really a gimmick. I hope you guys enjoy it because it's kind of a lot of fun, in my opinion. The more important thing is the concept, kind of moving away from the idea of needing yet another screen, yet another window in order to monitor what's going on in your network or to review, as well as bringing back fun into what we do, or amplifying the amount that we have. If you want to be really bored, I've got like 2 posts on Twitter, and I've recently put up Packet Racket on GitHub. I plan on doing a little bit more with that. Overcoming that initial paranoia is somewhat difficult in order to get the exposure you kind of need in order to progress yourself. I am a penetration tester for Coalfire. They're based out of Colorado. I work out of actually Kansas City. Unfortunately, Kansas at the moment. I'm from Missouri. So what is this? This is a kind of a tool debut. I've actually got lucky enough to spam out this talk a lot and was able to refine it a little bit. But the more important part is that if I can patch together some crappy lines of Python, including about 600 lines of if-else statements, you can too. Do it, put together something, publish it, and come talk about it. These are lots of fun to attend. Why did I bother with it? Quite honestly, I thought it was a cool idea. I really wanted to bring us more towards the age and era of interactivity, and I feel constantly like we're in the age of text-based video games still when we deal with security. Because it's a lot of fun, but yet, I mean, unless you're using something like Armitage, it's pretty much all text-based. You've got your manuals, you've got your codexes, etc. I want to do the next step. Movies like Hackers, they're flying through hacking the Gibson. Completely inefficient, wouldn't be very, really just efficient is the best way to put it, but it would be so much fun. And if somebody can put that into a VR headset, that's going to be a great time. Unfortunately, cool idea doesn't make for a very good CFP submission, so the explanation that I actually give is an alternative means of network analysis. Because we are constantly dealing with alt-tabbing, switching windows, wondering what tab, what is what. And Wireshark is a great tool. It's a fantastic tool, but yet it's another window. And if you're not looking at it, the packets are gone and you don't necessarily notice. The emails that your log monitoring and network monitoring systems are sending, how many emails of those do you get that you can actually parse yourself and read? It gets a little bit overwhelming. tcpdump, while fantastic for capturing packets, I have issues with its output. I'm going to also go through some demos of these just to promote some familiarity of anyone who's unfamiliar with these interfaces. I'm going to do a little bit as seen on TV flubs, because they're really good tools. In order for me to be able to have a case of presenting an alternative, I have to point out their drawbacks. So why can't I store my soda on the side of the couch? It's because I don't have the handy couch hook soda storer. I also wanted to experience network traffic in a new way. It is all around us. Like that Wi-Fi hotspot, I've always wanted to be able to see or experience in some way the knowledge that a lot of people or so many devices are connecting to either the hotspot, to the cellular networks, through these LAN cables. We're not quite there yet, but I feel like changing the way that perception is conceptualized is a good step, because all of those, yet again, it's using the eyes. If we start using sound instead, it becomes a new medium, letting our eyes still perceive and proceed with whatever they need to. I have some faint hopes of expanding the appeal of InfoSec to those perhaps from the humanities background. I taught English to college freshmen prior to becoming an InfoSec professional. There are a lot of people in that area who don't want to do this job, but a lot of them like music. If you can create a correlation between the two, they may start understanding that one is far more lucrative than teaching, and you don't have to grade. Additionally, the idea of accessibility. If we are trying to fill these roles in the companies, in these gaps that we have, that we keep hearing about, and I'm, again, propagating that, we can't necessarily keep ruling out people just because they are not necessarily seen as customarily fit. My vision is terrible. I actually get tired of staring at a screen for, well, since Windows 10, you can only look at your screen for 18 hours a day because you can only adjust your active hours for an 18-hour window. Which, that's a rant for another time. But the key is, you get tired of looking at it all the time. This provides a way to stop looking at it and listen. And someone who might not necessarily be able to run through a packet capture using Wireshark because of the font, this can be kind of like the narrator feature for network traffic. So this is just a basic screenshot of tcpdump. I'll go through a little bit more interactive. This is one of the reasons why I like to point out the fact that it's not necessarily a great interface, because it dumps lines out on a screen. You can adjust the options, but it's just, it has no pizzazz. Wireshark, they bring in some colors. They got color coding. They have buttons, they've got, actually with the telephony stuff, you can record VoIP and play it back. So they actually have some sound. Wireshark's good, but yet again, it's another window. My option is Packet Racket. Kind of already discussed it, what the idea is, what the conception. The name of it is taking the digital signal and bouncing it into an audio tone that hits your ear. Therefore, Packet Racket, and it sounds like an absolute racket right now. I'm doing a fair amount of tweaking with the tones, but it takes work. And I'm not the greatest, I will admit. I'm not a DJ. With the basic comprehension and idea of, if you know what a bass line sounds like, you can hear what something aberrant how it would differ. And with any bass line, of course, if you get used to the traffic patterns of somebody running a CNC channel over perhaps Tor, you may not realize that it's something you should be concerned about. But if it's not there while you're learning how your network sounds and all of a sudden you start hearing it, that would be a red alert style sound. And basically a flag that you should start looking at what's going on. It's really useful to, well, I say it's really useful, it could be really useful for either an analyst, as in a SOC analyst, IT network analyst, etc., or a pen tester. For the tester, I rely on responses from services. If I'm testing a web application, I send a probe, I'm expecting a response. If all of a sudden I stop getting responses, it's entirely probable that I crashed the server. If I don't know about that until 3 hours afterwards, maybe I'm just running automated tests, maybe I'm on another conference call, who knows? The conference call is not a great example because this would be noise. But the idea is once the sound stops coming back, I can realize that something's going on and I can start paying attention to it. For an analyst or IT tech, is there an attack on your network, or did somebody just plug a switch into itself and you're dealing with a packet storm? Basic kind of ideas behind how it works. I currently have 2 scripts going on. One is Basic Racket, which is precisely that. It is incredibly basic. It only covers a small range of services because it actually has a function that crafts the beeps of .wav files. It does the math, writes it out to a WAV file, saves it. So theoretically, you should be able to download basicracket.py into a standard Linux system, run it, and have it work. I don't know if that's actually the case. I'll be candid. It's weird. It's missing the PCAP reading functionality because that's hard. I'm not a great developer. I'm honest about this, but I'm willing to throw stuff together and try to read why it doesn't work. One of the reasons why I created the basic version is I really, really hate sending a script that I've been working on to somebody and say, hey, this is really cool, check it out. They run it and say, Was it supposed to spit out import module not found or import error? No, it wasn't, and I don't want you to have to go through the process of either using pip or apt or whatever third-party library I was relying upon. Basic Racket is supposed to address that. I can email that to someone, they can run it, it'll work. If someone's more not necessarily competent, but more familiar with Python and its peculiarities, I'm doing a more robust version with Packet Racket. That's the proper. Because Scapy is a wonderful, wonderful library. It allows for it's a far easier way to parse packets instead of calculating the offsets yourself. And if people are willing to download another library, perhaps they'll be willing to download sounds. I'm still working on getting sounds I can distribute because a number of the ones that I found that I can use come with tags of this is maybe royalty free, but please don't distribute, or this is not allowed to be distributed. So I'm still working on coming up with files that I can actually send so people could just do a git clone and have it work. Yeah, that'll be good. So that's the idea. This is background DNS traffic. I'm not touching my computer. My computer's just doing all these DNS requests. It's on a host-only network and it's trying to do these. It's also got that super annoying sound. However, and like I said, it doesn't have the PCAP functionality. But if we want to look at PCAPs, say for instance, what does FTP traffic sound like? We go to -v -p PCAPs FTP. It's a new generation of dubstep. Also, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I introduced a bug recently that I haven't quite been able to fix, where Control-C doesn't kill it. I have to background it, kill the process, and foreground it. I'm working on figuring that out. I don't know what I did. But in comparison, look at this. Do -n because otherwise I'll try to resolve. Do the -r. As just one. Super useful. You guys can tell exactly what is suspicious about that PCAP. You can, your eyes are better than mine. If we look at it in Wireshark, you start getting a better idea, especially because of the color coding, and you can see on the side that there's a nice pink-purple section, and any gurus in here probably have a good idea what that means. I'm just going to skip past that for the sake of making my point. And you'll notice that it takes up the entire screen. In order to use Wireshark, you can't window it very effectively. Oh, by the way, for those who are unfamiliar with Wireshark, this is a great tool. This is a TCP packet for an HTTP session. Here it has all the breakdowns of the particular layers, the data in each layer as it was. For HTTP, you can also do a really stellar, good, and view an entire HTTP stream. This is why HTTP is bad. Just as a, throwing that out there, and telling that, really any clear text protocols. The point that I'm making with that is now let's listen whenever I feed this through Packet Racket. You may not know what was going on, but you can start telling that there's a difference. And if at this point you started looking at your network monitoring tools, you can see that there's ICMP traffic incrementing through an IP range, indicating that somebody's running a ping scan. And we're going to go and stop that because, like I said, I really need to find better noises. It's, oh God, it's so, however, they're going to get better. I just need to wipe, because the way that it's going about is I'm mapping out the Etsy services file to the individual sounds. Then I'm having a default sound for the first 100, then I think each 1,000, and then after 10,000, I start breaking it up into chunks of 10,000. So 10,000 to 20,000 has one sound, 20,000 to 30,000 has another sound, just because at that point you don't necessarily care so much about it. But if it's a specific thing, I want it for it to have a context. Now, where does this become something you can actually start doing besides PCAP files? Well, one idea that I've had is that it'd be kind of cool if you could craft your own music with it. For example, a standard port scan, not standard, but just kind of incrementing through ports that I have configured here. And this is a PowerShell script that I like to use whenever I have a foothold on a host in a network and I don't want to upload anything or pivot through it. I don't know what this is going to do, but I'm curious. Never happened. Never happened. And if you will observe, which is going to be difficult to do right there until I remember how to do that. I don't actually remember. I have an array of ports, which means that if I had any real musical talent, I could construct a sequence of ports. And this is where you would be expecting me to rickroll you. The sounds don't work that way yet. But one of these days, this. With the idea that any packet crafting or port connection tool becomes a means of writing music, which is played through the instrument of packet racking. Never happened? You saw nothing? So yeah. So as it stands, it's technically functional. It's not great, but it's functional enough that I get to come and show it off and have some fun with it. Things that I really want to do with it is implement it in Python 3, because people should be using Python 3. I started learning Python in Python 2.7, so it's what I started creating the project. I need to make with, the future and start using Python 3 before it becomes Python 4, and I have to overhaul everything. The biggest issue is print, like the parentheses. I want to implement PCAP functionality so that someone can get that script, and if they just have PCAP sitting around, or if they get them from a place like Malware Traffic's website, part of your traffic analysis could be listening to it. And you could start becoming attuned to what, okay, that's an SMB packet capture. Interesting. Hey, there's a bunch of DNS queries. I wonder what's happening with that DNS. And all of a sudden, the ICMP starts getting into it. You can start familiarizing yourself with what's going on. The tune catalog, it's going to be expanded. It's working. It really comes down to just the time it takes to open up all these files in Audacity. Oh, and so I don't want to bore people too much, but for those who find things entertaining, this is my module for Packet Racket process packet.py, where this is all the if-elses for assigning each different type of traffic a file, and this is why I admit that I'm not great at programming. So, well, the thing is that it's coming along, and it would be appreciated. So, I really want to implement an attacking and defending flag, because if you are attacking, you don't want to have offensive traffic be offensive to your ears. Whereas a defender, you kind of do. One thing that I basically want to try to put in are packet capture filters, so you don't care about HTTPS potentially, but you want to hear things like Tor, you want to hear things about known backdoors. Maybe it's Mirai comes out, and you want to know when people start banging on your port quad 2, like 2222. You could start listening for those specifically. So here's where I tricked you all. This isn't functional. If you tried to run this on an enterprise, you could have it take a packet capture of like 30 seconds. You would probably be playing that for the next hour. Because anytime you take something that is across the network in nanoseconds, picoseconds, and you tag on maybe 100 or so milliseconds, you are automatically attenuating the amount of time it takes to parse that data. I've contemplated a couple different ways, such as having a smooth tone, grouping, doing more statistical analysis, so it's not necessarily every single packet, it's variety. If it hits 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10, maybe 100, then play a tone. Been working with that. But yeah, wouldn't work very well on a real network. So it's not actually going to do away with Wireshark and tcpdump because they're fantastic tools, but I really do believe that it can serve as a companion in that you don't want to parse it with your eyes anymore. What does it sound like? What is a way to experience that net flow instead of just looking at it? This tool. Oh, and the biggest part is you can jam out to it. Somewhat. But it really plays into, whenever I'm testing, I love to have a soundtrack. Some of my hardest decisions of the day is what am I going to listen to while testing today? Once I get this up functional, I want it to be able to be this that I listen to. Any questions, comments, discussion? All right. So.
Were you playing that live or recorded?
Everything was live.
Could you get in touch with quet to integrate the noises?
With the pew pew, that is a thought worth pursuing. All right. Anything further?
Did you set up on GitHub?
It is up on GitHub.
And so you take feedback from people coming up with better ideas, new ideas.
No. Better. Please be better, because this right now.
We're talking about those gray hair guys about having normal traffic. Once you figure out what the baseline is, you just kind of be in background low amplitude, but all of a sudden sending a little alerts that would let you know they kind of sound like your ex-wife or something.
The nagging, precisely. Precisely the idea for the defending flag, where just have that be either low or completely removed, so that way only the points where you really want to be interested would come in. And one of the things that I am really keen on with presenting this idea, this talk, isn't the tool itself, it's the idea of maybe you want to monitor Splunk with this. Maybe you want to do some sort of other monitoring that isn't every packet on the network. Got your hand up? What's that?
When does the album drop?
When do you have a PCAP file?
He said after 10,000 packets are captured, it reduces into one sound. Does that play a sound for each packet captured?
So that is not implemented yet. That is a thought that I've had in order to solve the scaling issue. That is pure. Future Killian, once he's mastered his Python 3, is going to be able to knock that question out of the park. For now, it's probably going to be a flag that I put in to sort it.
Have you considered using MIDI
Instead
instead of sound boxes?
of sound. So I keep being suggested that, and quite frankly, my familiarity with MIDI and my familiarity with programming is not up to the task. But yes, it's something that is valid.
Could you make them acoustic tumbling sounds so that I can reminisce about my old modem?
And that is one of the reasons why I created this, because it was a terrible sound, especially, at about 2 a.m. when you really aren't supposed to be getting on and you don't want anyone to know that you're getting on. Yeah, I kind of miss those. Somebody else? Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard of Pete, the network Auralizer?
I had not.
Okay, so that's an older tool that was presented at a Usenix conference. It's not focused specifically on network traffic for, like, in terms of peak counts, but in terms of network traffic at the OS system, higher levels. So, like, things like system load average, emails coming in and going out, web traffic and such. But he plays sounds as well, but he layered them on top of each other rather than on trying to
Individually.
So basically, he sort of simulated like the background of jungle.
I have heard that.
Yes.
I have actually heard that, because yeah, you can do bird song and
Yeah,
such.
and it's a similar concept, though I think it was, focused more on monitoring the system versus monitoring just network traffic.
Gotcha.
But he is also a GitHub.
Fantastic. And that's about all the time I have. Really appreciate you guys being out here. It's fantastic.